They call it the ultimate mystery. For thousands of years, humanity has gazed up at the stars and wondered about the fundamental question that haunts every thinking person. Where did everything come from? Why does anything exist at all? Today, we're diving into the most profound evidence that points to an undeniable truth. God is the creator of the universe. This isn't some philosophical debate happening in dusty academic halls. This is about the most cutting-edge discoveries in modern physics, astronomy, and cosmology that are revealing something extraordinary. Something that's making even the most skeptical scientists pause and reconsider everything they thought they knew about reality itself. First of all, thank you for choosing to spend these moments with me and religion as it is. In this channel, we'll discuss topics of all religions, always respecting everyone's faith and beliefs. If this topic interests you, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and turn on notifications to be alerted of all new videos posted. Thank you and enjoy. When you look around at the world today, it's easy to get caught up in the noise. Social media arguments, political divisions, cultural battles. But step back for just a moment. Look up at the night sky. Consider the sheer magnitude of what surrounds us. We're living inside the most intricate, precisely calibrated system imaginable. And the deeper scientists dig into the mechanics of how it all works, the more they're finding evidence that points to something beyond random chance. Here's what we're going to uncover together. First, we'll explore the mathematical precision that governs every aspect of our universe. Numbers so exact, so perfectly tuned, that changing them by even the tiniest fraction would make existence impossible. Then we'll examine the remarkable discoveries about the fundamental forces that hold everything together. Forces that had to be calibrated with surgical precision for life to emerge. Finally, we'll look at what happens when the greatest minds in physics try to explain how the universe began, and why their own equations keep pointing them towards something that transcends the physical realm entirely. But before we dive into the science, let me share something that might surprise you. Many of the physicists and cosmologists making these discoveries aren't religious people. They didn't set out to prove God exists. Some of them actively hope to find evidence for the opposite. Yet the data keeps leading them to the same inescapable conclusion. The universe bears the unmistakable signature of intentional design. This is about facts, not faith. Observable phenomena that demand an explanation. Mathematical relationships that govern reality at every scale, from the smallest subatomic particles to the largest galactic structures. Patterns so intricate and purposeful that they challenge every assumption about how existence could have emerged from nothing. Let's start with something that will blow your mind. The universe is expanding at exactly the right rate. Not approximately the right rate. Exactly the right rate. If the expansion had been even slightly faster immediately after the moment of creation, matter would have spread out so quickly that stars and galaxies could never have formed. Everything would be cold, dark, and empty. If the expansion had been even slightly slower, the entire universe would have collapsed back in on itself before any complex structures could develop. How precise does this rate need to be? Imagine taking every grain of sand on every beach on planet Earth. Count them all up. That number represents roughly 1 quintillion. Now imagine that this quintillion represents the rate of universal expansion. If you changed that rate by adding or removing just one single grain of sand, the entire universe would become uninhabitable, 1 grain out of a quintillion. That's the level of precision we're talking about. But that's just the beginning. The fundamental forces that govern reality are equally fine-tuned. Take gravity, for instance. If gravity were slightly stronger, stars would burn out too quickly for life to develop. If gravity were slightly weaker, stars wouldn't be able to form at all. The electromagnetic force that holds atoms together follows the same pattern. Too strong, and atoms couldn't bond to form molecules. Too weak, and atoms would fall apart. The strong nuclear force keeps the centers of atoms from flying apart. The weak nuclear force governs radioactive decay. All 4 fundamental forces have to be calibrated within incredibly narrow ranges for a universe capable of supporting life to exist. Change any one of them by a tiny percentage, and you get a sterile cosmos where nothing interesting ever happens. Scientists call this the fine-tuning problem. And it's not just about the fundamental forces, the mass of protons, the charge of electrons, the ratio between matter and antimatter in the early universe. Dozens of constants and parameters had to fall within razor-thin ranges for reality as we know it to be possible. Some physicists tried to solve this mystery by proposing the multiverse theory, the idea that there might be an infinite number of other universes out there, each with different physical laws. In this scenario, we just happen to live in the one universe that got lucky with the right combination of constants. It's like winning the cosmic lottery. But here's the problem with that explanation. There's absolutely no evidence for other universes. None. Zero. It's pure speculation. And even if other universes did exist, that still wouldn't explain why the laws of physics themselves have the mathematical structure they do. Why is reality governed by elegant equations at all? Why does mathematics work to describe the physical world with such incredible accuracy? This brings us to something even more profound. The universe isn't just fine-tuned for existence, it's fine-tuned for discovery. The same physical laws that make life possible also make it possible for intelligent beings to understand those laws. We can observe distant galaxies, decode the quantum realm, and unravel the mathematical principles that govern everything from DNA to dark matter. Think about that for a moment. Not only did the universe have to be calibrated perfectly for conscious beings to emerge, but it also had to be structured in a way that allows those conscious beings to comprehend their cosmic environment. The transparency of the atmosphere, the stability of atomic structures, the predictable behavior of celestial objects. All of this creates conditions where scientific discovery becomes possible. Albert Einstein once said that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it's comprehensible. He was pointing to something remarkable about the relationship between mind and matter. The human brain, made of atoms and molecules governed by physical laws, somehow has the capacity to understand those very same laws. Consciousness can grasp concepts like infinity, contemplate the nature of time, and derive mathematical equations that predict the behavior of systems billions of light years away. This is where the evidence becomes overwhelming. We're not just dealing with fine-tuning of physical constants, we're dealing with the fine-tuning of reality itself to produce beings capable of recognizing that fine-tuning. It's as if the universe was designed not just to exist, but to be understood by the intelligent life it would eventually produce. Modern cosmology tells us that everything we see around us emerged from an initial moment of creation. Scientists call it the Big Bang, but that term is actually misleading. It wasn't an explosion in space, it was the beginning of space itself. Time, matter, energy, and even the laws of physics all came into existence simultaneously at that first instant. But here's what's truly staggering. The conditions at that moment of creation had to be absolutely perfect for everything that followed. The initial distribution of matter and energy couldn't be perfectly smooth, or galaxies would never have formed. But it couldn't be too lumpy either, or everything would have collapsed into black holes. The balance had to be exactly right. The temperature, the density, the rate of expansion, the fundamental constants. All of these parameters were set at the very first moment with the precision necessary to produce a universe capable of generating stars, planets, and eventually life itself. We're talking about conditions that existed when the entire observable universe was smaller than a proton, yet somehow those conditions contain the blueprint for everything that would unfold over the next 13 billion years. When physicists try to calculate the odds of all these factors aligning by pure chance, they arrive at numbers so astronomically small that they're essentially zero. We're talking about probabilities that make winning every lottery on Earth simultaneously look like a sure thing by comparison. This is where even the most committed materialist scientists start to acknowledge that something extraordinary is going on. The universe appears to be the product of intelligence. Not human intelligence, obviously, but intelligence on a scale that transcends anything we can fully comprehend. Intelligence capable of orchestrating the emergence of reality itself from a state of absolute nothingness. Some researchers have tried to argue that the laws of physics themselves could explain how something came from nothing. They point to quantum mechanics, which shows that particles can appear spontaneously in empty space for brief moments before disappearing again. But there's a fundamental problem with this explanation. Quantum mechanics requires the existence of physical laws, space, and time. It presupposes the very things it's supposed to explain. You can't have quantum fluctuations without quantum fields. You can't have quantum fields without space-time. You can't have space-time without the mathematical framework that defines its properties. So the question remains, where did that framework come from? What established the laws that govern quantum behavior in the first place? This is where the scientific method reaches its limits. Science excels at describing how things work within the universe, but it struggles to explain why there's a universe for those mechanisms to operate within. Every scientific explanation ultimately relies on assumptions about the mathematical structure of reality. But mathematics itself points beyond the physical realm. The great physicist Eugene Wigner wrote about what he called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in describing the natural world. Mathematical concepts developed purely as abstract mental exercises turn out to have perfect applications to physical phenomena. Numbers and equations that exist only in the realm of ideas somehow capture the deepest truths about material reality. This suggests that mind, not matter, is fundamental. The mathematical order that underlies the physical universe exists in the realm of thought and logic, not in the realm of particles and forces. The universe behaves like the expression of a vast mathematical mind, operating according to principles that transcend space and time. When we examine the behavior of subatomic particles, we find something that defies every intuitive understanding of how reality should work. Particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until they're observed. They can be entangled across vast distances, instantly affecting each other's properties regardless of the space between them. They can tunnel through barriers that should be impenetrable according to classical physics. These aren't just theoretical curiosities. These quantum phenomena are the foundation for the most successful scientific theory ever developed. Quantum mechanics makes predictions that are accurate to more than 10 decimal places. It's enabled the development of computers, lasers, medical imaging devices, and countless other technologies that define modern civilization. But here's what's truly mind-bending. The mathematical equations that describe quantum behavior were developed before anyone understood what they actually meant. Physicists discovered the formulas that govern the quantum realm through pure mathematical reasoning, then spent decades trying to figure out what those equations were telling us about reality. This pattern repeats throughout the history of science. Mathematical insights precede physical discoveries. Einstein's equations predicted the existence of black holes decades before astronomers found any evidence for them. The mathematics of particle physics predicted the existence of new fundamental particles years before they were detected in laboratories. Mathematical theorems about curved space-time led to the discovery that the universe is expanding. It's as if the mathematical structure of reality exists independently of the physical phenomena it describes. The equations are already there, waiting to be discovered by minds capable of abstract reasoning. This points to something profound about the relationship between consciousness and cosmos. Consider what happens when physicists push their equations to their absolute limits. When they try to trace the history of the universe back to the very first instant of creation, their mathematical models encounter what's called a singularity, a point where the normal laws of physics break down and the equations produce infinite values. At this boundary, space and time themselves become undefined. Matter and energy reach infinite density. The mathematical tools that work perfectly to describe every other aspect of the universe suddenly fail to provide meaningful answers. It's as if there is a wall beyond which physical science cannot penetrate. Some scientists have tried to eliminate this problem by proposing that time doesn't actually have a beginning. They suggest that the universe might be self-contained, with no need for an initial moment of creation. But even these models require the pre-existence of physical laws and mathematical relationships. They still can't explain why anything exists rather than nothing. Others have embraced the implications of what their equations are telling them. If the laws of physics break down at the moment of creation, then whatever caused the universe to exist must transcend those laws. It must exist outside of space and time. It must be capable of bringing mathematical relationships into existence from a state where no relationships of any kind previously existed. This brings us to one of the most remarkable discoveries in modern physics. The universe appears to be made of information, not matter, not energy, but information. The fundamental particles that make up atoms aren't tiny solid objects. They're patterns of information encoded in quantum fields. The forces that govern their interactions are mathematical relationships that determine how information flows and transforms. When physicists describe an electron, they're not describing a miniature sphere with mass and charge. They're describing a set of quantum numbers that define the electron's informational properties, its spin, its energy level, its probability of being found in various locations. The electron exists as information organized according to mathematical principles. This extends all the way up to the largest structures in the universe. Galaxies, stars, and planets are all elaborate patterns of information organized by the mathematical laws of physics. The spiral arms of galaxies follow logarithmic curves. The orbits of planets trace ellipses defined by precise equations. The fusion reactions inside stars proceed according to quantum mechanical probabilities. At every scale, from quantum to cosmic, we find information organized by mathematical principles, but information requires a mind to process it. Mathematical principles require intelligence to establish them. The universe looks less like a giant machine and more like a vast computational system running on hardware we can barely comprehend. This computational view of reality has led some physicists to propose that we might be living inside a sophisticated simulation. If intelligence advanced enough to create universes exists, they argue, it might have the capability to simulate entire cosmic histories down to the quantum level. From inside such a simulation, the simulated beings would have no way to detect that their reality was artificially constructed. But this raises an even deeper question. What would it mean for reality to be simulated? A simulation requires someone to design it, program it, and run it. It requires computational resources that exist outside the simulated environment. It requires an intelligence capable of conceiving and implementing the mathematical algorithms that govern the simulated world. Whether we live in base reality or in a simulation, the fundamental question remains the same. Where did the mathematical order come from? Who or what established the logical principles that make coherent existence possible? Why does reality conform to rational patterns that minds can discover and understand? The more we learn about the universe, the more it resembles the product of a supreme intelligence. Not an intelligence constrained by physical limitations, but an intelligence capable of conceiving and implementing the very framework within which physical existence becomes possible. An intelligence that transcends space and time while making space and time possible. Modern cosmology has revealed that the universe had a definite beginning. Everything we can observe or measure came into existence at a specific moment in the finite past. Before that moment, there was no before, no space for anything to exist in, no time for any processes to unfold, no matter or energy, no physical laws, nothing that science can study or measure. Yet somehow, from this state of absolute nothingness, everything emerged. Not gradually over vast periods of time, but instantaneously. The entire framework of physical reality, complete with precisely calibrated constants and mathematical relationships that would eventually give rise to stars, planets, and conscious beings capable of contemplating their own existence. This isn't just the greatest mystery in science, it's the greatest mystery period. How does something come from nothing? How do mathematical relationships establish themselves in the absence of anything for them to relate? How does information organize itself without an intelligence to process it? Every attempt to answer these questions using purely physical explanations ultimately fails because it requires the pre-existence of the very things it's trying to explain. Physical laws can't create themselves. Mathematical relationships can't establish their own validity. Information can't organize itself without intelligence to give it meaning and purpose. The evidence points to a conclusion that transcends the boundaries of empirical science. The universe exists because it was brought into existence by something that transcends the universe, something with the power to establish the mathematical framework that makes coherent reality possible, something with the intelligence to fine-tune countless parameters with the precision necessary for conscious beings to emerge. This something must exist outside of space and time because it created space and time. It must be more fundamental than matter and energy because it brought matter and energy into existence. It must be the source of mathematical and logical principles because it established the rational order that governs everything from quantum mechanics to cosmic evolution. When we follow the scientific evidence to its logical conclusion, we arrive at the recognition that the universe bears the unmistakable signature of its creator. Not as a hypothesis or philosophical speculation, but as the most reasonable explanation for the extraordinary fine-tuning, mathematical elegance, and informational complexity that characterizes reality at every level. The God who created the universe is not some distant deity disconnected from the physical realm. This is the intelligence whose thoughts become the laws of physics, whose mathematical insights manifest as the quantum fields that give rise to matter and energy, whose creative power sustains the precise relationships that make existence possible moment by moment. The implications of this understanding extend far beyond academic discussions in university lecture halls. When intelligence, its expression of divine, we recognize that the universe itself is that transforms how we view our place in the cosmic story. We're not act products of blind natural processes, identical by. We're intentional participants in a reality designed to produce conscious beings capable of recognizing their creator. This recognition brings us face to face with the constants that govern reality of the most startling discoveries in modern physics. Aren't just arbitrarily set values. They form an interconnected web of relationships that had to be established to work simultaneously for any of. Change one, and the entire system collapses. It's like a cosmic combination lock where every number had to be dialed in perfectly before the universe could open up into existence. Consider the delicate balance between the electromagnetic force and gravity. If electromagnetism were slightly weaker, electrons couldn't bind to atomic nuclei and atoms would disintegrate. If it'd be impossible and no complex molecules could form. Gravity were slightly stronger, chemical reactions would be weak enough to allow stars to shine for billions of years, but strong enough to hold galaxies together and enable planet formation. But here's where it gets really mind-blowing. These forces don't operate in isolation. They work together in ways that seem choreographed. The strength of the strong nuclear force determines how efficiently hydrogen fuses into helium inside stars. This affects stellar lifetimes, which determines how long planets have to develop complex chemistry. The weak nuclear force controls radioactive decay, which provides the energy that drives geological processes on rocky worlds. Every piece of this cosmic machinery interlocks with every other piece. Remove any component, adjust any parameter, and the entire apparatus stops functioning. This isn't the kind of outcome you get from random processes. This is the hallmark of intentional design by an intelligence that understood exactly what it wanted to accomplish. The mathematical relationships that govern these interactions display a beauty and elegance that takes your breath away. When physicists derive the equations that describe quantum field theory or general relativity, they're not just discovering useful tools for making predictions. They're uncovering principles of such profound symmetry and mathematical depth that they seem to reflect the aesthetic sensibilities of their creator. Einstein spent his later years searching for what he called a theory of everything, a single mathematical framework that would unify all the fundamental forces and explain why the universe has the structure it does. He never found it, but modern physicists continue the quest. What they're really searching for is the mind of God expressed in mathematical form. String theory represents one of the most ambitious attempts to decode this cosmic mathematics. It proposes that the fundamental constituents of reality are tiny vibrating strings existing in 11 dimensions. Different vibrational patterns correspond to different particles and forces. If string theory is correct, then the entire universe is essentially a vast symphony, with every electron, every photon, every gravitational wave contributing its own note to a cosmic composition of unimaginable complexity. But string theory also reveals something troubling for those who want to explain the universe without invoking a creator. The mathematics of string theory allows for an enormous number of possible universes, each with different physical laws. Out of these countless possibilities, only an infinitesimally small fraction would be capable of supporting any form of complex structure, let alone conscious life. This makes the fine-tuning problem even more acute. Not only did our universe have to win the cosmic lottery by getting precisely the right values for its physical constants, it also had to be selected from an effectively infinite menu of possible mathematical structures, almost all of which would have produced sterile realities incapable of generating anything interesting. Some physicists have tried to solve this by proposing that all possible universes actually exist simultaneously in some kind of multiverse. In this scenario, we shouldn't be surprised to find ourselves in a life-supporting universe, because only life-supporting universes contain beings capable of making observations. It's a classic case of selection bias. But this explanation creates more problems than it solves. First, there's absolutely no evidence that other universes exist. The multiverse hypothesis is completely unverifiable and unfalsifiable, which means it's not really science at all. It's more like science fiction dressed up in mathematical clothing. Second, even if infinite universes did exist, that wouldn't explain why the mathematical framework that generates them has the properties it does. Why does the underlying structure of reality allow for the possibility of conscious observers at all? Why isn't the fundamental nature of existence so chaotic that no coherent patterns could ever emerge? Third, the multiverse hypothesis actually makes the fine-tuning problem worse, not better. If every possible universe exists, then there should be vastly more universes with fake observers, simulated consciousness, or Boltzmann brains that randomly fluctuate into existence for brief moments. The probability of finding ourselves in a universe with a consistent history stretching back billions of years becomes vanishingly small. This brings us to one of the most profound insights emerging from modern physics. The universe appears to be fine-tuned not just for existence, but for discovery. The same conditions that make complex life possible also make it possible for intelligent beings to unravel the secrets of cosmic history and understand the fundamental laws that govern reality. Think about how remarkable this is. The transparency of Earth's atmosphere allows us to observe distant galaxies and study stellar evolution. The stability of atomic nuclei enables us to use radioactive dating to determine the age of rocks and fossils. The speed of light is fast enough to make astronomical observations practical, but slow enough that we can measure relativistic effects in our laboratories. Even the scale of the universe seems calibrated for discovery. If galaxies were much closer together, their gravitational interactions would make stable planetary orbits impossible. If they were much farther apart, we'd see nothing but empty blackness when we looked up at the night sky and might never have realized that other galaxies exist. The fundamental constants that make chemistry possible also make it possible for chemical processes to encode and process information. DNA uses the same quantum mechanical principles that govern atomic structure to store genetic instructions. The human brain uses electromagnetic forces to generate the neural networks that give rise to consciousness and rational thought. This creates a stunning circle of cosmic purpose. The universe is structured by mathematical laws that make it possible for matter to organize itself into patterns complex enough to generate minds capable of comprehending those very same mathematical laws. Reality is designed to understand itself through the conscious beings it produces. When we contemplate the sheer improbability of this arrangement, we're forced to confront the inadequacy of purely naturalistic explanations. Random processes don't tend to create systems that understand randomness. Mindless forces don't typically generate minds capable of studying those forces. Unconscious matter doesn't spontaneously develop consciousness, sophisticated enough to probe the deepest mysteries of existence. Yet here we are, conscious beings made of atoms and molecules, using our brains to decode the quantum mechanical principles that govern atomic behavior. We're studying the nuclear reactions that power stars using elements forged inside those very same stars. We're measuring the expansion of the universe with instruments built from materials created by cosmic evolution. The more we learn about the universe, the more it resembles a vast information processing system designed to generate intelligence. Every level of physical reality, from quantum fields to galactic clusters, follows mathematical rules that organize matter and energy into increasingly complex patterns. These patterns eventually become complex enough to support neural networks capable of rational thought and scientific discovery. But information processing requires more than just hardware. It requires software, programming, and ultimately a programmer. The mathematical laws that govern physical processes aren't just arbitrary rules that happen to work. They're elegant algorithms that achieve specific outcomes through the most efficient possible means. Consider how the laws of physics solve computational problems. When you throw a ball, it automatically follows the trajectory that minimizes the action integral. When light travels from one point to another through different media, it automatically takes the path that minimizes travel time. When particles interact through quantum fields, they automatically explore all possible paths and interfere in ways that produce the most probable outcomes. These optimization principles permeate every aspect of physical reality. Nature consistently finds the most elegant solutions to complex mathematical problems. This strongly suggests that the physical universe is the expression of a supreme intelligence that comprehends all possible solutions and implements only the most beautiful ones. The evidence from modern cosmology points to an even more startling conclusion. The universe didn't just have a beginning in time, it had a beginning of time itself. Before the moment of cosmic creation, temporal concepts like before and after had no meaning. Causation, sequence, and duration are properties of the created order, not features of whatever brought that order into existence. This means that whatever caused the universe must exist outside of time altogether. It can't be subject to the limitations of temporal sequence or causal chains that govern everything within the physical realm. It must be eternal in the deepest possible sense, not everlasting through time, but transcendent of time entirely. The mathematics of general relativity makes this conclusion unavoidable. When physicists trace cosmic expansion backward to its ultimate origin, they encounter what's called the initial singularity. At this point, not just matter and energy, but space and time themselves reach infinite curvature. The equations that describe physical reality become undefined and meaningless. Some cosmologists have proposed models that eliminate this singularity by suggesting that time might be cyclical, or that quantum effects might prevent the complete collapse to a mathematical point. But even these alternatives require the pre-existence of physical laws and geometric relationships. They push the question of ultimate origin back one step without actually resolving it. The fundamental issue remains unchanged. Why does anything exist rather than nothing? Why do mathematical relationships have the power to generate physical phenomena? Why is reality structured in ways that conscious minds can comprehend and appreciate? These aren't questions that science can answer using its normal methods of observation and experimentation. They point beyond the physical realm towards something that transcends the categories of space, time, matter, and energy. Something that exists necessarily rather than contingently. Something that serves as the foundation for mathematical truth and logical consistency. When we follow the evidence wherever it leads, we arrive at the recognition that the universe is the handiwork of a creator whose power, intelligence, and creativity exceed anything we can fully comprehend. This isn't wishful thinking or religious speculation. This is the most reasonable conclusion that can be drawn from our best scientific understanding of cosmic history and physical law. The God who created the universe isn't confined by the limitations that constrain finite beings. This creator exists beyond space and time while making space and time possible, transcends matter and energy while bringing matter and energy into existence, operates outside the bounds of physical causation while establishing the causal relationships that govern natural processes. This creator's thoughts become the mathematical principles that define possible realities. This creator's intentions manifest as the physical constants that determine how matter and energy interact. This creator's aesthetic sensibilities are reflected in the elegant symmetries and beautiful equations that describe natural phenomena at every scale. But perhaps most remarkably, this creator chose to design a universe capable of producing beings made in the divine image. Conscious creatures with the capacity for rational thought, moral reasoning, and aesthetic appreciation. Beings who can recognize the mathematical order that governs their existence and trace that order back to its ultimate source. When we understand the universe in these terms, science becomes more than just a method for predicting and controlling natural phenomena. It becomes a form of worship, a way of appreciating the infinite creativity and wisdom of the mind that conceived and implemented the cosmic design. Every new discovery reveals another aspect of divine intelligence. Every solved equation unveils another glimpse of eternal truth. The fine-tuning of physical constants, the mathematical elegance of natural laws, the information processing character of quantum mechanics, the precise calibration required for stellar nucleosynthesis, the delicate balance that makes planetary systems stable. All of this points toward a single, overwhelming conclusion. The universe exists because God willed it into existence, not as an accident or afterthought, but as the deliberate expression of infinite wisdom, power, and love. A reality designed from the very beginning to unfold into the magnificent cosmos we observe today, complete with conscious beings capable of recognizing their creator's signature written into the very fabric of existence itself. This understanding transforms everything about how we view our existence and purpose. We're not random accidents floating through an indifferent cosmos. We're intentional creations placed within a reality specifically designed to nurture consciousness, rationality, and the capacity for divine recognition. Every breath we take depends on physical constants calibrated with impossible precision. Every thought we think relies on quantum mechanical processes that follow mathematical laws of breathtaking beauty. But here's where the evidence becomes even more compelling. The universe isn't just fine-tuned for life in general, it's fine-tuned for intelligent life capable of scientific discovery. The same conditions that make complex chemistry possible also make it possible for that chemistry to organize itself into neural networks sophisticated enough to understand chemistry itself. The forces that bind atomic nuclei together also provide the energy sources that power the brains contemplating nuclear physics. This creates what scientists call the cosmic coincidence problem, though coincidence is hardly the right word. The expansion rate of the universe, the strength of gravity, the mass ratios of fundamental particles, all of these had to fall within incredibly narrow ranges not just for stars and planets to exist, but for those stars and planets to serve as platforms for the emergence of minds capable of studying stars and planets. Consider the element carbon, which forms the backbone of all known life. Carbon production requires a very specific nuclear process inside massive stars. Helium nuclei have to combine in just the right way under just the right conditions to forge carbon atoms. If the strong nuclear force were slightly different, this process couldn't occur and carbon would be virtually absent from the universe. Without carbon, the complex molecular machinery of life becomes impossible, but carbon production is just the beginning. These carbon-rich stars have to explode as supernovas to scatter their newly forged elements throughout space. The explosion has to be powerful enough to disperse the materials across interstellar distances, but not so violent that it destroys the elements entirely. The resulting shock waves have to compress nearby gas clouds in ways that trigger the formation of new star systems enriched with heavy elements. Then rocky planets have to form at just the right distances from their parent stars. Too close and water boils away into space. Too far and everything freezes solid. The planets need strong enough magnetic fields to deflect harmful radiation, but not so strong that they interfere with the delicate chemistry of life. They need large enough masses to retain substantial atmospheres, but not so large that crushing gravity prevents the development of complex structures. Even the moon plays a crucial role in Earth's habitability. Its gravitational influence stabilizes our planet's axial tilt, preventing extreme climate variations that would make long-term biological evolution nearly impossible. The moon also drives tidal forces that may have been essential for early life's transition from sea to land. The probability of all these factors aligning by chance approaches zero. Yet here we are, conscious beings capable of recognizing and appreciating this cosmic fine-tuning. We can measure the fundamental constants, trace the nuclear processes that created our constituent atoms, and calculate the odds against our own existence. The universe has become aware of itself through us. Matter has organized itself into patterns complex enough to contemplate matter. The cosmic code has produced beings capable of deciphering the cosmic code. This recursive relationship between mind and cosmos points to something profound about the nature of reality itself. Intelligence isn't something that accidentally emerged from mindless matter after billions of years of random interactions. Intelligence appears to be built into the fundamental structure of existence from the very beginning. The mathematical laws that govern physical processes are themselves products of intelligence, the thoughts of a cosmic mind thinking the universe into being. Modern quantum mechanics reveals just how deeply consciousness is woven into the fabric of reality. Quantum systems exist in states of superposition until they're observed or measured. The act of observation causes what physicists call wave function collapse, the transition from multiple potential states to a single actual state. This suggests that consciousness plays a fundamental role in determining physical reality at the most basic level. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics go even further, proposing that consciousness is necessary for the universe to exist in any definite state at all. Without minds to observe and measure quantum systems, reality might remain trapped in an eternal state of unrealized potential. The universe needs conscious observers to actualize the possibilities encoded in its quantum structure. This brings us to one of the most startling implications of modern physics. The fine-tuning we observe might not just be about making life possible, it might be about making consciousness possible. And consciousness might be necessary for physical reality to exist in any meaningful sense. We're not just products of the universe, we're participants in the ongoing creation of the universe through our observations and measurements. But consciousness itself presents an even deeper mystery. How does the firing of neurons in a 3-pound lump of biological tissue give rise to subjective experience? How do electrochemical processes in the brain generate the felt sense of being a conscious observer? How does matter become aware of itself? This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness, and it's proved remarkably resistant to scientific explanation. We can map neural activity, trace the flow of information through different brain regions, and identify the physical correlates of various mental states. But none of this explains why there should be any subjective experience accompanying these physical processes. Why isn't the brain just a biological computer processing information without any inner sense of awareness? The materialist assumption that consciousness somehow emerges from complex arrangements of unconscious matter faces serious logical problems. How can something that's completely absent at the level of individual particles suddenly appear when those particles are arranged in certain configurations? It's like expecting wetness to emerge from dry atoms or expecting color to appear from colorless photons. But if consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, if awareness is a basic feature of reality rather than an accidental byproduct of neural activity, then the fine-tuning of the universe takes on an entirely new significance. The cosmic constants aren't just calibrated to produce complex chemistry, they're calibrated to produce the specific kinds of complex chemistry capable of supporting conscious experience. This suggests that consciousness was part of the plan from the very beginning. The intelligence that designed the universe intended for matter to organize itself into patterns, sophisticated enough to generate awareness, thought, and understanding. The mathematical laws that govern stellar evolution, planetary formation, and biological development all serve the ultimate purpose of bringing conscious minds into existence. This understanding transforms our perspective on scientific discovery itself. When we uncover new physical laws, we're not just learning about nature, we're discovering the thoughts of the mind that conceived those laws. When we solve mathematical problems, we're participating in the same kind of rational activity that established mathematical truth in the first place. When we create beautiful works of art or music, we're echoing the aesthetic sensibilities of the Creator who made a universe filled with beauty and elegance. The more deeply we probe the structure of reality, the more clearly we see the fingerprints of transcendent intelligence. The equations that describe electromagnetic fields display perfect mathematical symmetry. The principles that govern gravitational interactions follow elegant geometric patterns. The quantum mechanical laws that determine atomic behavior exhibit profound logical consistency. None of this had to be the case. We could imagine universes governed by arbitrary rules, chaotic forces, or incomprehensible principles. Instead, we find ourselves in a reality characterized by rational order, mathematical beauty, and logical coherence. These aren't accidental features of a randomly assembled cosmos. They're the inevitable expressions of a supremely intelligent creator working out divine intentions through physical processes. The anthropic principle, the observation that the universe appears fine-tuned for the existence of observers, points toward this same conclusion. We don't just happen to live in a universe compatible with our existence. We live in a universe that seems designed specifically to produce beings like us. Observers capable of scientific investigation, mathematical reasoning, and aesthetic appreciation. Conscious minds able to recognize and respond to the evidence of their creator embedded in the structure of reality itself. This recognition brings us to the threshold of the most important decision any conscious being can make. When faced with overwhelming evidence of intelligent design in the cosmos, when confronted with the mathematical precision that makes our existence possible, when we recognize the elegant beauty woven into every aspect of physical law, what do we do with that knowledge? Some choose to suppress the implications, desperately searching for alternative explanations that preserve their materialist worldview. They propose infinite multiverses for which no evidence exists. They invoke quantum fluctuations that require pre-existing laws to operate. They suggest that consciousness is an illusion, even though consciousness is the one thing we can be absolutely certain exists. But others follow the evidence wherever it leads. They recognize that the universe bears the unmistakable signature of its creator. They understand that the mathematical laws governing reality reflect the thoughts of a supreme intelligence. They realize that their own capacity for rational thought, moral reasoning, and aesthetic appreciation connects them directly to the mind that designed the cosmos. This recognition transforms everything. Science becomes a form of revelation, unveiling new aspects of divine creativity with every discovery. Mathematics becomes a language for communicating with the intelligence behind physical law. Consciousness becomes a gift that enables finite minds to participate in the infinite wisdom that governs all existence. The God who created the universe didn't establish physical laws and then step back to watch events unfold. This creator remains actively involved in sustaining the mathematical relationships that make coherent reality possible moment by moment. Every quantum interaction, every gravitational field, every electromagnetic force operates according to principles that require continuous divine maintenance. We exist within the thoughts of God made manifest as physical reality. Our consciousness is a reflection of divine consciousness. Our capacity for understanding mathematical truth connects us to the source of mathematical truth. Our appreciation for beauty and elegance reveals our kinship with the Creator, who embedded beauty and elegance into the fundamental structure of existence. The fine-tuning of the universe isn't just evidence that God exists. It's evidence that God created everything specifically for the purpose of relationship with conscious beings. The same intelligence that calibrated the rate of cosmic expansion and determined the strength of the fundamental forces also designed a reality where finite minds could discover these cosmic parameters and trace them back to their ultimate source. This is why the question of cosmic origins matters so profoundly. It's not just an academic exercise or abstract philosophical speculation. It's about understanding our place in the grand scheme of existence It's about recognizing the intention behind our existence and responding appropriately to that recognition. When we understand that the universe is the handiwork of an infinitely intelligent creator, when we realize that every aspect of physical reality reflects divine wisdom and power, when we recognize that our own consciousness connects us directly to the mind behind the cosmic design, then we face a choice that will determine the ultimate meaning and purpose of our lives. We can continue pretending that we're accidents in an indifferent universe, random arrangements of atoms that happen to develop the illusion of consciousness and meaning. Or we can embrace the truth that the evidence overwhelmingly supports, that we're intentional creations of a loving God who designed the entire cosmos as a stage for divine human relationship. The magnitude of this realization should shake every thinking person to their core. We're not talking about philosophical speculation or religious wishful thinking. We're talking about the most rigorous scientific analysis pointing toward an inescapable conclusion. The universe is the product of a mind so vast, so intelligent, so creative that it defies human comprehension. But here's what makes this even more extraordinary. The same God who fine-tuned the fundamental constants with impossible precision, who calibrated the rate of cosmic expansion to allow for galaxy formation, who established the nuclear processes that forged the elements necessary for life, also chose to create beings capable of discovering these very facts. Think about the breathtaking audacity of that plan. An intelligence that exists beyond space and time deciding to create conscious observers who could eventually recognize the fingerprints of their creator embedded in the mathematical structure of reality itself. This isn't some distant deity who wound up the cosmic clock and walked away. This is an intimately involved creator whose thoughts become the laws of physics, whose intentions manifest as the precise relationships that govern every interaction between particles and forces. The God revealed by modern cosmology is simultaneously transcendent enough to exist outside the universe and immanent enough to sustain every quantum fluctuation that makes atomic stability possible. Consider what this means for the nature of scientific discovery. When physicists derive equations that describe electromagnetic fields, they're not just uncovering arbitrary patterns in nature. They're discovering the mathematical thoughts of the intelligence that designed those fields. When chemists map the periodic table and understand why elements have the properties they do, they're glimpsing the logical structure that organizes matter according to divine wisdom. Every breakthrough in our understanding of natural law reveals another layer of the cosmic design. The elegant symmetries of particle physics, the geometric beauty of Einstein's field equations, the quantum mechanical principles that govern atomic behavior, all of these point toward a reality that's fundamentally mathematical in nature. But mathematics itself exists in the realm of abstract thought, not in the physical world of particles and forces. This creates a stunning revelation about the nature of existence itself. The physical universe isn't the foundation of reality. It's the expression of something more fundamental, the thoughts and intentions of a supreme intelligence. Matter and energy are like the words in a cosmic language, following grammatical rules established by a mind that transcends the material realm entirely. The implications ripple through every aspect of human experience. When we use reason to solve problems, we're participating in the same kind of rational activity that established the logical principles governing natural processes. When we create works of art that move us with their beauty, we're echoing the aesthetic sensibilities of the Creator who filled the universe with elegant mathematical relationships and stunning visual displays. But perhaps most remarkably, when we experience consciousness itself, that mysterious inner awareness that allows us to contemplate our own existence, we're encountering a reflection of the divine consciousness that conceived and sustains all reality. The fact that we can think, feel, choose, and love isn't an accidental byproduct of neural complexity. It's evidence that we're made in the image of the God whose infinite mind serves as the foundation for everything that exists. This understanding completely transforms how we should view the relationship between science and faith. They're not competing explanations for natural phenomena. They're complementary approaches to understanding different aspects of the same divine reality. Science reveals the mechanisms through which God sustains the physical universe. Faith recognizes the personal relationship that God desires to have with the conscious beings created in the divine image. The God who calculated the precise strength needed for the strong nuclear force to enable stellar nucleosynthesis is the same God who cares about the moral choices made by conscious creatures on a small planet orbiting an ordinary star in an unremarkable galaxy. The intelligence that fine-tuned the rate of cosmic expansion to allow for the formation of the complex structures over billions of years is the same intelligence that desires relationship with every human being who has ever lived. This brings us face to face with the most profound question any conscious being can ask. If the evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that we're the intentional creations of an infinitely intelligent and powerful God, what does that God want from us? Why would a being capable of creating entire universes with precisely calibrated physical laws care about the thoughts, choices, and responses of finite creatures like ourselves? The evidence is overwhelming, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. From the mathematical precision that governs quantum mechanics to the fine-tuned constants that make stellar formation possible, from the elegant equations that describe space-time to the information processing nature of consciousness itself, every discovery points toward the same inescapable truth. God is the creator of the universe. This isn't speculation or wishful thinking. This is where the evidence leads when we follow it honestly, courageously, and completely. The choice is yours.